Welcome to the Engineering Success Podcast. Today we're talking about AgTech engineering and leadership with Anton. He's the Director of Engineering at Taranis and the author of the Developers Leading newsletter, which has 12,000 subscribers. Now let's turn it over to our host, Daniel.
I'm Daniel Morgan. I'm hosting the Engineering Success Podcast. So thank you for coming on board. Yeah. So let's talk about a little about yourself real quick. So it looks like at some point you were doing some game development and then you finally switched over into like actual developer role for soft products and software.
Yeah, it was a fun journey. So yeah, actually I started in high school. My cousin, actually, he went on 2007, I think. There was the iOS boom. So it was just the App Store started and he actually caught that wave very early and he developed some apps and I was like 15 or something like that. And he bought me a Mac and an iPhone. He taught me to code. We started with Objective-C and then we moved a bit to Unity, to games. And then that's when I actually decided I want to be a software developer. I was 16 or something like that. So I worked for 2.5 years in his company. We developed, Unity has an asset store. So we actually created the game, but we sold things for other developers. And as a 16 years old boy, making money from creating games was a huge experience for me. So that's the start. And then I moved through DevOps roles and architect role. And then in the last 4 years, landed into actually proper software development in a startup.
So was part of that journey trying to figure out what you wanted to do in the tech space, or was it you just were trying different things and finding what you really fit for you?
Yeah, it was what I wanted to do. Yeah, it was trying to figure out. I thought DevOps would be more my type. Like I tried games, it was fun, but I wanted to understand how things work behind the scenes, operating systems, networking. I wanted to fully understand that. And I felt I thought like the DevOps is the basics. And then on top of that, you build applications. So I felt I knew how to build applications, but I didn't understand what's going on behind the scenes. So I wanted to take a step back. But then after a few years, I thought it's a bit boring, honestly, for me. It was like, I want to have the customer interaction. I want to have the business value and not the behind the scenes. So yeah, it was a journey of discovering it. And I'm still on the journey, right?
Yeah. That's the case. It's interesting you said that you rather interact with customers, because I always get the sense with a lot of IT folks, it's the exact opposite, right? Even though it's something like 80% of the people that are in IT are actually in a sales field for engineering. So what was that transition for you, like from like a DevOps role to a leadership role? What surprised you? What challenges did you come into play with?
So I moved actually I was leading in DevOps team and I moved to software engineering as a developer. So it was a mix. I stopped leading and went more to the software world. So this was a tough transition for me. It's rarely that people lead teams and then go back to engineering. Some people do, but usually those that kind of give up management, they tried it and then they want to go back to development. I knew I want to go to the management path, but actually I couldn't really find some place that would take me as a software engineering team leader after DevOps. So I had to start from the bottom. So the first year was very tough for me to go back. I learned everything from scratch. I know how to code, right, because of the game development experience, but it was a bit tough because I was used to taking a decision and being involved in many meetings. It was tough for my manager too. I was pushing him and telling him what I think he should do, and it was a tough relationship. Because he wasn't sure he wanted to be a manager. He was newly promoted and I overrode him a lot. There was a lot of tension. But from the software engineering side, I really enjoyed building stuff that customers used and not just the customer of customers, like the developers being my customers previously. So I think but as an engineer, it was not that obvious. But when I was promoted after a year or so, then I actually felt the change, right? So it was like much more involved in the business world. I'm working in an AgTech startup, which is a completely different field for me. Agriculture, drones, and my team was responsible for all the drones and the stuff in the company. So it was very interesting.
Yeah. So since you're bringing up drones, so why don't you explain a little bit about what Taranis does?
So in a nutshell, we are flying over fields, usually in the US, huge fields like corn, soybean, thousands of acres. We take photographs from drones, very high resolution photograph, under 1 millimeter per pixel, so you can actually see the insects and everything. And then we have an AI that analyzes them and provides insight for the farmers using a mobile app and a website, so you can see the insects, the diseases, the weeds with the exact species, like everything that happens in the field, and you don't need to scout it manually, right? You don't need to walk and see what problems you have. So its startup is, it's not that young, right? It's a decade already, but it's a very tough field to figure out, right? We are not, we don't have many competitors. The main competition is actually doing nothing, like in many of such industries. It's not against another product, it's against what they actually do right now, which
Right.
is not using any tech. So this has been
And I assume some of the challenges there would probably be US regulations, right? Especially with airspace.
so it was in the beginning, right? We actually want to fly with airplanes, not drones. We fly in Brazil with airplanes, Cessna airplanes, small ones, like with the spray. But in US you can't. You actually cannot fly with airplanes under areas where people actually live. And a lot of the fields they have a farm inside them, so you cannot fly there with airplanes.
Right.
But we figured out, and drones, you need to get like a commercial license, which I did a year back after 1 year managing the team. I wanted to go through the process myself. So I took the regulation and became a licensed drone pilot and everything. It was very fun experience, but that's part figured out. Every year we have 150 pilots, drone pilots. We call them pilots, but yeah, they're like control drones and that work for us. So I wouldn't say it's a big problem. Now with the TikTok ban, this might be a big problem because we're using DJI drones, and DJI is a Chinese company. So
Right.
we are still trying to figure that out. We have alternatives, but
Yeah. So
there is some regulation issues.
so how are you guys handling engineering leadership while in the age of AI? Like we have all this proliferation of Gen AI and all this other stuff. And how do you integrate it into your business or into your culture in order to be able to provide support that some people want, but necessarily while keeping the business protected, right?
So honestly, I don't think it really affected us yet. Like we have Copilot licenses, the basic, and people can choose Copilot or GPT as engineers to be more productive. But as a business, like the farmers are still struggling with the basic technology of using a cell phone application and a website. And you're talking about AI, it's like it will get there, but it's very early. Currently, we talk to them. We wanted to do like a chat bot they can ask question about our information and stuff like that, but it's tough. They have a lot like farmers. I learned that they are very private. They don't want their information to be used by for anyone. So when you say we'll have some model that answer question, the first thing they ask, who will you send my information to? Will other people get to know like my practices? So it's a tough one. Like it, a lot of our like sometime our a while ago, our VP of sales said that it's like almost like the medicine field. You need to keep the information protected, and you cannot just. We wanted to do a feature that aggregates the information, and then we can do recommendation based on what other farmers did. Like if we have tons of data. That's the age of AI, right? Use the data to
Right.
your advantage. But I learned that you cannot do that. Like
They don't.
yeah, they don't
Yeah.
let you use the data, and if you ask, they will say no. We don't. Our data is ours. What seed we used, what practices we did. I think it's mainly, I don't know, I would say US culture or maybe South US culture. I don't know. It's not like in medicine.
Oh,
For me, it's hard to see the reason. It's hard to see the reason for it, but
I think it's more of a Western culture thing because I think it's the behavior in Europe, right? Because you've got GDRP protection laws there as well, which are actually more stringent than some of the US laws for,
right.
consumer protection, right? I live in Maryland, who just passed a new protection law against selling our data. So it's actually one of the states that has now the best protection laws for consumers in the United States. So I think that's part of it. Is it's not just US. I think it's the Western culture in itself that we want to be private, we want to have our privacy, and we don't want to share data. So yeah, I can see that as a challenge that you as a company, because you're a technology-driven company, you're willing to adapt, but the customer base, you need to adapt to them because they're what's driving your product.
Exactly. Yeah, and for me, I'm not a farmer, right? I wouldn't know, but I would say I would be happy to give my data so I would have better information given to me based on all my neighbors. It's like a trade-off. And it's not like we can do it anonymized, and if you want, we can delete it. It's not, it will be compliant with everything. It's just like more of a principle. That's my data, and I don't want anyone to have that. And yeah, we need to adapt to that.
Yeah. All right. So as you're director of engineering, so how do you balance between development productivity, velocity, quality, and your team's health?
That's a big one. I think because we're agriculture startup, our cadence of work is strange. So from May to July, we are right now, right? We're in a peak season. And for the other 9 months, we have barely usage, like very little usage of our system, because our 90% of our customers in the US, and the US, after you harvest, you don't do anything in the field. So it's a very tough balance, because in this month, I need the people to push, like the velocity, it needs to be off the charts, because we adapt very fast. And if we miss the train now, if we don't deliver some feature during the season, we have to wait 1 full year to deliver it and understand how it works. And each stage of the season needs different feature. When the planting emerges from the ground, there's a feature to replant, decides if you want to replant the whole field. And this feature needs, like, the first time we get feedback, we need to iterate very fast. So for me, that's the balance. 2 months that people sometimes work weekends, work 13, 14 hours days, and then we prepare them mentally for it. And the health, you said, I'm talking about not quality here, just velocity versus team health. The other 8, 9 months is easier. We can work with regular sprints, 2-week sprints, more quiet, less production problems. So it's a balance that we prepare people coming here that for 3 months, you need to work your ass off, and then like it would be more chill, and you can compensate for that. And the quality is definitely suffering. During the season, it's more important for us to deliver something fast because of the very long feedback cycle of 1 year. So it's mainly reactive mode, and we develop very fast features. Now it's very recently we finished something that took us 14 days, like 14 straight working days from the whole team, like weekends included. And it was very time sensitive. It was like in the movies. We delivered it. They needed to send some reports to the governments for conservation. Never mind, I wouldn't get into details, but we delivered it like 3 hours before the deadline. And it was like 2 weeks. And then the compensate, people get some time off and everything, and it's get back on track. So I would say that's a tough balance.
Yeah, it definitely is a tough balance when you have a tight constraint, because I at work just recently ran into this where a development team was building a product that they were going to launch on the 22nd, and their last thought was authentication. And
that one.
And basically, so in last week, it's okay, figuring out their authentication workflow for them and saying, this is what you guys need to do. If you can't get here, this is what I recommend to do for right now until we can get there. Because basically they had 2 apps that were needed to be able to be authenticated against our SSO, but they never built the second app to authenticate against the SSO directly, which made the whole workflow completely messy. So it's just like, I think you guys just need to do a device trust model right now just to get past this.
And were they able to implement it on time?
They still have to finish it at this point.
20 seconds, yeah, in 4 days. Yeah,
because you come to us at last week, the people that run the SSO, and say this to us, and it's just like, you guys should have started this 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and often, like, for the engineers, it was very tough because, like, we could have gotten that deadline, the one that was this week, it was May 16th. We could have gotten that like 3-4 months ago. It was just a miscommunication with our clients, and then you understand the deadline at the last moment, and then everyone needs to jump on board. And I think you have if you need people to jump for the, you have, I don't know, it's like a strikes. You have one strike, two more strikes, and people are out. They will say, okay, you cannot do this to us. You need to learn from your mistakes, and you need, like, the next time this team comes to you, you expect them to take the buffer and come prepared. And if they don't do, the leader is responsible for that.
Yeah. So speaking of mistakes, so how do you guys handle like technology decisions that were made, like software development decisions, and then you realized you picked the wrong option, right? So, for example, like doing OIDC versus doing a SAML authentication, and you realize really to do what you want to do, you needed OIDC, right? So, how do you handle those type of situations where you've made a technology decision that wasn't the right way?
I think, like for us, let me know if I'm getting too technical. We have tons of microservices, and we have. Are you familiar with gRPC versus REST?
Yes.
So 4 or 5 years ago, someone thought that like gRPC is the best way to go for us because we have many microservices and we have a lot of communications between them. So we had a lot of REST microservices, usually with Fast API or Flask, and we moved everything to gRPC. And the problem is when we started, it was pretty early. I would say it was not that early, but 4 years ago when I joined, it was not that common and it was very hard to onboard. And I still think that developing gRPC services is harder for most engineers. It takes more time with updating the packages and the client and everything. You have the pros, but for us, we were not very time sensitive. The processes are not very time sensitive. It's not like it's not like fines or anything. It's okay to have a bit of latency if the development speed is faster. So we had two factions, and the CTO decided for the gRPC, and then for a long time the decision was we can't create new REST services. It was like, okay, everything needs to be gRPC. You cannot work with anything else. And I would say it took a lot of time to understand this. Like, it's okay to have two different approaches, right? It's okay if a team wants to do something and they explain why, right? For example, if you want a service that might be like an API gateway that someone might access from outside or another company or something like that, it's much harder to integrate with gRPC services versus a REST one. So I would not say it's a bad decision or wrong decision, but it was a decision that, in my opinion, I wouldn't have taken. I would stay with the REST, and it was tough. People still complain about it. It was a joke that there is a big problem with gRPC with default values. If you don't send anything, if it's int, it's getting 0. This creates tons of bugs because when you get a response, by default, you don't know if it's null or if it's 0. And never mind. It's a lot of jokes on this one. Like, why did you choose it?
Yeah. So it almost seems you realized this mistake was causing you a capacity issue with your engineers, and one capacity issue, having valuable time to be able to work on other things because now they're spending more energy on something they really shouldn't have.
And frustration. And
Yep.
they're like, okay, I want to create a new service. I know it should take 2 hours. Why does it take me 3 days to do that and create all those proto files and everything? So yeah, capacity and frustration. And when a backend engineer joins the company, a senior one, you want them to be on board very quick. And now they're like, what is this gRPC thing? And yeah, it takes its toll. But I feel that now it's better because the world is moving towards that. But that's the quickest one I can think of tech mistake. We definitely made more, but
All right. So I'm just going to rattle off a bunch of questions here and that way. So how can you get an engineering leaders? How can engineering leaders get a seat at the table?
I think that most often people are promoted. Everyone talks about because they're great engineers, but in my opinion, you talked about it in the beginning of the podcast that most engineers hate to talk with customer, right? You want to sit on your computer and stuff like that. And now there is the trend of product engineers, like less PMs, more engineers taking ownership. And from what I experienced, to get a seat in the table, you need to be visible. You first need to do a decent job as an engineer, but you don't have to be the best engineer in your team. If you are delivering on time, and I would say first reach the senior level, code for 4 or 5 years, but then it takes it about people, you having opinions about the product. I think that's a step that many engineers miss. They just develop and let the PM take the decisions. But I think it's very important for the balance of the company for the engineering leaders to have opinions about the roadmap, about the features, about what needs to be done. And as an engineer, if you have them and you talk and learn from your product manager about the business, about your customers, first you will be respected, you will be consulted with, and a much higher chance that someone will think about you when a promotion comes. Because the first step is to lead a project, right?
So it seems like to me you're saying the soft skills are really important to be able to get the seat at the table, being able to communicate, interpersonal skills, managing relationships with not only your management team, but with your actual developers as well, having a rapport.
Yeah, but I would say that soft skills is general, right? Everyone knows that soft skills, you need them, right?
Right.
I think I would make it even more specific. It's the business orientation. It's being able to talk with the customer success, not only product and design, being talk with the customers themselves, right? Being much more business oriented. I think that especially now, you talked about a bit the age of it, like the age of AI and where is it going? I think this is where engineers and leaders should be, much more on the business side, while in parallel staying technical and being able to work with the team and doing some work yourself. So that's the balance. And I think you talked about communication. It's okay if you're not that smooth, right? I would say that I had a rough start in Slack conversations, in meetings. Like I can get on people's nerves and I can be a bit rough, but if you have opinions and people learn to work with you, I think that's okay. If engineers are considered like, or introverts, or just some rough or not very nice, people never say that they are nice, they still have a chance at management. They need to be decent people, right? But you don't need to be a smooth talker that everyone likes and the center of the party. You can be a bit eccentric and it still work out.
Yeah, okay. That's good. How do you make sure your engineering team is spending time on the right things?
That's directly connect to the business connection. That I never accept the roadmap as it is. You have the Excel with this is the 3 months work plan, this is the 6 months work plan. I think that I make it very tough for the product manager that works with me. Like, why do we do that? Okay, please explain. What need to answer? Making very difficult this process of deciding, because I think it's very critical. If you decide something wrong and you don't know to adapt, people are very frustrated. And we had a chance, like an occurrence around 2 years ago, that we worked for 4 months, something that was thrown into the trash a day after it was released. And I think it happens often. Usually it takes a year, but the day after we released, our commercial side said, we don't need this, you can throw it away. This means there was a horrible communication during the way.
Yeah.
So
then you would say that it's important for engineers to help drive business outcome?
Definitely, yes. And make sure to fight for the smallest solution, like the fastest solution possible. And people talk about being agile, all the time, but most of the time when people talk about agile, they think that you need to work in short cadences to your end goal. You have a project for 4 months. In 2 weeks, you need to deliver a very small MVP, and then you need to continue. But very often, this means you're just going on the same path in 2 weeks jump, right? You will be in the same path in 4 months. The real point that I see in Agile that you can go somewhere completely different. So let's say you have a feature that takes 4 months. You finish in 2 weeks. If based on the feedback, you are not willing to throw away every design you have, everything you have, and go on the different direction, it means that you are a bit stuck and you're not really agile. And then I saw very often that, okay, we released the MVP, but no matter what the customer will say, we know already what's the next stage, what's phase 2, what's phase 3. So I think that's very important for the engineers to say, okay, we finished the MVP. Why do we continue? What's the good metrics? What's the customer feedback has been that made us to think it's a good idea?
Okay.
So drive business. Yeah, you summed it up well.
Yeah. So what signals do you use to manage engineering teams effectively? Like, when do you think as a director you need to get more hands-on and involved with the team?
So I'm in a mixed situation because I manage both managers and still my own team, like in interim situation, and we don't have a manager on my previous team after I was promoted. So it's easier for me because with my own team, I'm more hands-on. With the other teams, I let the team leaders take the lead. But my tough balance is not being too controlling because when I get hands-on, I want to take the decisions, and people like sometimes prefer for me to leave them alone. So I'm still figuring out. I was recently promoted, and I'll use this is my
No.
first time managing managers. So I'm still figuring out like how to do that correctly. And we
Right.
had 2 weeks ago, we had a conversation with one of my managers that she felt that I was a bit stepping on her toes, that she knows the job. She's been doing it before me, and she doesn't really need me to question every design or be everywhere. She needs me like, more as an external. I feel that the director of engineering is a bit more external role. I need to give her quiet. I need, if there is a high severity, something I can help there, but be a bit less involved in the day to day. But I still think that, in my opinion, director of engineering have to at least 10% of the time, if not 20, do some coding, like a bit to understand the process and not lose touch. It's very important for me. Fix bugs, look at alerts. Like people told me when I was promoted, like, okay, you don't want to code anymore, right? That's the career path. You go a VP and then not code in a day in your life. And I feel it's like, it's a bit wrong. You need to sample. Yeah.
I've always had more respect for leaders that are actually getting their hands dirty than actually just giving orders. And I've seen that so many times throughout my career, and the difference of how you interact with these individuals that still do it is much more different because they get what's going on versus somebody that's just there to be there. And the interaction becomes a much more rich and much more deeper because you've get this trust going with that individual, and you end up with a lifelong friend in a way, especially if you've been at the company for a long time.
Exactly. Yeah, completely agree. And the questions you ask are much better. If you do at least one bug, you cover so much. You cover the CI/CD, you cover like how the reviews go. You cover a lot by just a single line of code can help a lot in how you talk with people. And I agree.
Yeah. It's not with that, right? You understand the flow of the whole organization as a whole because you're getting involved. And it's not, you're not like, instead of questioning why somebody's doing something some way, you understand why it's being done that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you effectively try to manage teams, especially when the remote or hybrid environment, especially when COVID hit?
So we are in a hybrid environment. I had bad experience with remote management, I would say. I had one developer that was like, the whole team is hybrid, and we had one remote from another country, and it was not successful. I think it's not a general rule, right? It was more because of the fit of the individual, but it was tough, right? Because as a manager, you really need to let go in remote because everyone talks about micromanagement in the office. People have, they say they're busy, but all those conversations. So it took me
Yeah,
a while, but right now I'm able to just leave people alone. When they are at home, I don't try to, when they work, how they work, what they do, what's the progress. At first, it was very hard. I was like sending Slack messages every 2 hours. Like, how is it going? Do you need me? What do you do? It was a bit of a, I would say, trust issues. And because I was burned by that, like a developer that, he was not answering in the whole day. And then in the next daily, he was like, yeah, I made some progress. And then it was not finishing his task. And you knew he was not working the whole day. And it was like, okay, I don't know how to deal with it. I can't, you say you're
yeah.
working, what can I do? I would,
In other words, he wasn't able to show any progress to you in any way, and not responding to you throughout the day. Yeah, that I could understand, right? And but it seems like also here in America, you have issues with the whole idea is if you're not in the office, you're not working. And when that's not the case, when studies have shown that it's the exact opposite, right? That remote workers, it's shown that they actually dedicate more time to work when they're remote working than they do in the office, which is the exact opposite. But they're doing it at a more relaxed pace, right? They might work for 3 hours and then maybe they go and have a coffee and something and just sit down and then come back and do work. And because of those type of situations, they're working much longer hours and they don't realize it.
Honestly, I think that not all people like that. Like I would say the majority, but there is a minority of people that abuse remote work.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about it. Like everyone is champion of the CEOs. How can they bring us back to the office? We're so productive. But there are people who are not like that. And it's in the office, it's hard, it's easy to spot them, but in remote work, it's harder and it takes management. And I think that's the right solution, right? Managers needs to be involved and need to take tough decisions, but it's easier for people to say when you're remote you're not working, but it's
There's
blind eye on that
yeah.
it is a problem.
There's also the other aspect of remote work and where these managers don't trust. And so what do? They start installing productivity monitors on everyone, which to me shows a complete level of distrust of all your workforce. And in some cases, some of it's pretty invasive because sometimes they have full control of the camera.
That I never heard about that. That's way overboard. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So there's several pieces of software out there where you can you have full control of the laptop basically. You can have full recording of the screen, and you can also snap the photo from the camera to see exactly what they're doing at the given time.
Is that legal?
That's the problem, right? In some states it's not going to be. Because like in Maryland, right, it's a two-party consent state. That wouldn't necessarily be illegal because it's my home. And but if I was at the office, it technically would be legal because it's a private business. It's not expected. Like,
Wow.
you know, privacy at work is not expected, right? But privacy at home is expected. It's the same thing like out in public, right? If I was out in public, taking photos perfectly fine because you're out in public. So so yeah, you got those issues to work through when it comes to remote work. And it's, do you go to an extreme or do you just start trying to do regular check-ins if you think somebody's underperforming? And if they're not responding, then okay, yeah, they're underperforming. Because I know I work remote. If my boss messages me, I try to respond almost right away. Or if I'm tied up with something, it's, hey, give me 5 minutes.
Yeah, but I think those two are like, it's okay to respond like also in an hour, but the point is like the balance that I strike with my team, that if you need to go for an hour or more in the middle of the day, that's fine. But I want to see the out of office. So just so I know, don't need to say where you go. But if I'm not expecting to get a response in 2 hours, I want to see, okay, you're somewhere, you'll be back and you will catch up someday. But yeah, it's okay to not expect the immediate response, but the expectations is very tough. Like for me as a junior manager, I didn't set them up correctly. I didn't say, okay, these are the availability hours. Let's say you have core hours from whatever, 4 core hours that everyone is working together. Feel free to manage your own time in the other hours, but such conversations sometimes don't happen. And then managers expect that the teams will understand what you want from them.
So you said core hours. So you think it's really effective for remote teams as long as they have some hours that overlap throughout the day, but everything else is pretty much like flex time.
Yeah, I think for us, for example, after the daily, like the 3-4 hours after the daily, when people like need continue conversations and then going understand what they need to do. If people like, some people like to work late in the evening, so I still think that 3-4 hours from 10 to 2, like together, something like that, like lunch aside. But it's important to have this. And then if someone wants to go, take the kids out early and then continue whatever, that's fine. But if everyone just works whenever they want, it can be a bit hectic, right? Because you get a response and then you're not available. There needs to be some balance, especially if you're in the same time zone. I think that 3-4 hours, it's fine.
Yeah, no, we deal with that challenges where I work because we're technically a global organization, but most of our HQs are in the United States. So we've got people spread across all time zones, even though technically our work requirements are we're supposed to live within 100 miles of one of the work locations, which isn't
Yeah.
the case. So most of us are the HQ's in DC, Washington, DC. So it's like most of us are getting up at 8 o'clock, but there's other people where 8 o'clock's still 4 at night for them.
Yeah.
And some of those people are critical team members, especially when it comes to infrastructure, IT, and being able to produce or solve problems throughout the day. But yeah, it's definitely a value that the people's hours overlap, and not to mention not only overlap, but don't interrupt somebody's time off, right? Because what I see personally is somebody might work their 8 to 5 because that's what they want to do. But then you've got another team member that didn't start till 5 p.m. at night, and then it's expecting people to respond to them.
Yeah. I think that's the same. That goes back to setting expectations. For me, like as told those people, there is a scheduling feature everywhere in Slack and emails. If you work after the core hours, for us it's 9 to 6. If you work after 6, don't expect anyone to answer. Schedule your messages for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Like, don't even bother people. They might feel they're obligated to answer you because you're more senior. Don't put them in that boat. If it's not critical, schedule the message for tomorrow and it's fine. And then like in 9 a.m. you're getting tons of scheduled messages, but that's fine. That's your work day, and then you can start to catch up. I agree that can also be a problem, especially if unspoken. And then one more senior member expects an answer from our junior one. It's, yeah, those unspoken things can be tough.
Yep. All right, I think that's pretty much all the questions we have for now. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast, Anton.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation. It was an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for all your valuable input. We appreciate it.
That's all for today on the Engineering Success Podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. Stay tuned for more.